So today I've chosen one of my favorite songs to listen to in headphones. I'm going to run it through 3 of the headphones I have here, and I'm going to talk about how each headphone causes the same song to present differently. So let's get into it. Before I go any further, I need to mention that this video is made possible by Headphones.com, who's your premier resource for buying and learning about headphones, IEMs, DACs, amps, speakers, cables, everything in between. They have an awesome 365-day return policy, which means if you're unhappy with your purchase, you can return it within a year. And they also have an incredible customer service division staffed by true audiophile nerds like my buddy Sam here. So the song I chose for today is Third Eye Blind's Graduate off of their A Collection compilation. Graduate originally appeared on their self-titled album, which was a massive success for them and is arguably one of the best recorded pop rock records of all time. But I'm choosing the A Collection version because the arrangement is a little bit simpler. It's just the album version has this kind of electronic intro that I think is kind of not coherent with the rest of the song. As far as headphones I'm going to be testing, the first is the Sennheiser HD550, which is Sennheiser's newest in the 5 series and one we reviewed on the channel here not too long ago. The second is the Audeze MM-500, and the third is the Sony MDR-MV1, which is a more bassy V-shaped type headphone. Despite all of these headphones having similarities, they actually present quite differently. I'm going to start with the Sennheiser HD550. So let's dive in. Okay, so I'm at about 46 seconds, and there's maybe a little bit of paperiness at the very, very top of the guitar's range, but otherwise it's very solidly presented. I will say I don't get a lot of the sense of like weight behind the music or anything like that, so drums sound a little bit more snappy than full and big. I'm gonna go ahead and keep listening. Okay, so I'm at about 1 minute 34 seconds, and there is maybe a little bit of extra kind of sandy sizzle on the hi-hats with this headphone. I think due to a low treble elevation that I tend to get with this headphone. The vocals are very nicely brought forward and are kind of sitting neatly on top of everything else, which is nice, and I think is kind of due to the slightly forward center mid-range here. So I'm gonna keep listening. Okay, so I'm at 2:17 now, and I just got done with kind of the main guitar solo in the song. This guitar solo has a wah pedal on it, and for those of you who don't know, a wah pedal is essentially just a resonant low-pass filter that modulates in frequency, and doing so kind of mimics the vocal formant of a person going wah, wah, wah. But I love that when listening to this song on this headphone, you get a very clear sense of where that wah filter kind of is in the frequency band. Really makes the guitar solo stand out and sound ultra dynamic and fun. I will say I'm noticing that the kind of overall image of this song is definitely on the small side with this headphone. Maybe a little bit smaller than I'm used to, actually, but only marginally so. I'm gonna go ahead and keep listening. I think the song's almost over. Okay, actually, I'm stopping at 2:23 because there's a distorted bass part that happens right after the guitar solo that has just so much kind of crunch on it, and the sound on this is very, very textured and intense sounding, which is really cool. All right, I'm gonna get back into it. Okay, so that song rules. I love that song. Overall, the HD550 I think presents this song quite accurately. Now, what I will say is this headphone could definitely have a little bit more bass. I do feel like the kick drum and the bass sound a little bit underrepresented in terms of their note weight and their dynamic punch. So I just wish there was a little bit more wallop there. In terms of stage, I would also say that it's a little bit on the smaller sounding side. It's kind of a tighter image presentation overall. I would just say it's still very firmly an in-head kind of headphone experience. That's the HD550. Let's go ahead and move on to the MM500 now and see how that does. And this is another neutrally tuned headphone, but it presents quite a bit differently from the Sennheiser headphones in my experience. So let's go ahead and listen and see what differences we unpack. Okay, so 45 seconds in here. Immediately, the presentation of imaging and timbre is actually quite different. There's a little bit of a juicier kind of sound here. The kind of sandy, dry texture I was getting before is replaced by something that feels a little bit wetter. In terms of the imaging, I'm feeling like the treble in particular is kind of distanced a little bit more outward. And I think that has to do with a difference between the upper treble and the lower treble of this headphone. But I'm going to keep listening and see if that impression holds. Yeah, so I'm stopping at 120 because I'm starting to notice that the treble elements I mentioned before, so like the hi-hat, are actually also a little bit elevated and kind of higher imaging than the rest of the mix, which I'm actually starting to not be as much of a fan of. I feel like that kind of incoherence in the vertical stage is not something I tend to like very much. This headphone does have a dip around like 4 to 5 kilohertz, and I think that dip is causing the bass to be a little bit more prominent than it might look in a measurement. So far, it still sounds pretty good. I think the treble might still be a little too forward for me, but we'll see how it fleshes out. So stopping at 151 right before the guitar solo, something I'm noticing with this headphone is it doesn't quite represent the dynamic impact in a way I find pleasing or correct. It just sounds like kick drums and the snare drum are a little bit too focused on the uppermost treble. I just feel like there's not enough crack on them while there's plenty of kind of fizz and sizzle. But we're about to get into the guitar solo, so let's go ahead and listen to that and see how it sounds after. Okay, so stopping at 217, the guitar solo just ended and that crunchy bass part afterwards just started happening. And yeah, I can't help but feel like there's just less of a precision in the mid-range compared to the Sennheiser. Whereas with the Sennheiser, I felt like every nuance of the wah pedal was trackable as it moved through the frequency band. And how on the bass part afterwards, it sounded really crunchy and forward. I'm just not quite getting that intensity and that kind of viscera from this headphone. So I'm going to keep going. The song's almost over. I will give kind of my overall take at the end of the song. Okay, so what I think people are going to like about this headphone with this kind of music is that you get a treble forward presentation, but only in the upper treble. So for people who want like extra textures on really small cues, that's all going to be there for this headphone in a way that it actually won't be there for the HD550. However, for me, who looks for kind of the intensity of things like the guitars in this song as a sign of the headphone being good, I just don't quite get it with this headphone. It sounds a little bit muted and a little bit less precise overall, both when it comes to the texture as well as things like the imaging and layering of all of the sounds. But with that said, let's go ahead and listen to the MDR-MV1, which is our most different headphone of the bunch, and see how that colors this track. And that was intentional. I wanted to make sure that I included something that was quite a bit different than the other two to see kind of the widest difference I could possibly get with this song. So let's go ahead and listen and I'll tell you guys what I think. Okay, so 22 seconds in and I'm already stopping because something that's really interesting about this headphone is because of how V-shaped the tuning is, there's like an extra sense of contrast in the spaciousness and the imaging presentation. The bass is very separated from the mid-range, which is very separated from the treble. And I get this kind of more faux three-dimensional type of presentation where the guitars, which are hard panned left and right, kind of drift outward a little bit more than either of the other headphones. So they have a little bit more distance. And then the bass is like ultra prominent in the center and kind of like sitting above even the drum kit, which is a very interesting presentation where you get a very kind of exciting image in your kind of head stage. Already, I find it to be a very exciting presentation. So let's keep listening. Okay, so stopping at 53 seconds. This is definitely the most fun headphone between the three. Like, the bass is easily the most impactful between all three of them. What's interesting is that it's so bassy, but the mid-range is all there. It's actually a very well-tuned mid-range. So you get kind of a best of both worlds situation where you get a reasonably neutral mid-range, but you also get a really fun bass and treble coloration. So let me keep listening and I'll let you know what I think. Okay, so stopping at 215, you get that kind of expressiveness in the textural overtones of the upper mid-range with the wah pedal kind of sweeping through, but you don't like lose any of the fun anywhere else in the mix. So the bass is still really hitting hard during that part of the song, and the ride cymbal, crash cymbal interplay is still all there and very good at dictating the energy of the mix itself. Yeah, I'm gonna keep going, but this headphone's really working with this song. Okay, so Now I'm in the unique position where I think the overall most enjoyable headphone for that song in particular is actually the Sony MDR-MV1, but I wasn't really expecting to like it more than the Sennheiser 550 or the MM-500 on this track, but I actually think I do. What's interesting about this headphone is that you get, the forward, fun bass presentation and the shimmering, sparkling treble presentation, both of which I think a lot of people like, but isn't really gonna work with all music. But you get that with a really solid mid-range presentation that on the vocals, snare drum, and guitar, I didn't notice any overt colorations. I've said before that I think the MDR-MV1 is kind of an underrated headphone, and that kind of fine balance between being V-shaped and exciting, but not too V-shaped that you lose the kind of expressiveness in the mid-range. It's a pretty unique headphone that I think a lot of people would actually enjoy if they give it a chance. So I think with that, that's probably all I have to say about this song and these headphones anyway. So if you like this video, go ahead and leave a like. If you have any suggestions on how to do something like this a little bit better, go ahead and let me know in the comments. This is obviously a brand new type of video for this channel, and I'm not sure how people are going to receive it, so I guess we'll just have to see. If you want to see more of the music that me and other Headphones.com contributors use when testing headphones, we have a forum post with all of our reference playlists listed, and that'll be at forum.headphones.com, also linked in the description. And if you want to chat about audio or headphones or whatever, feel free to hit me up in our Discord server, which is located at discord.gg/headphones. And with that, it's been Listener from Headphones.com. Y'all have a beautiful day. Peace.